All right. Welcome to the Rise Up podcast. I am your host, Jonah Mitchell. And on this show, I help chronic dieters rise up to their potential, simplify the weight loss process so it doesn't feel as miserable as many of the attempts have been for you, or just overall just simplified in a way that it just feels a part of your life, as opposed to you changing every aspect of your life just to hopefully see the scale go down. And on this episode today, I this is going to be a Q&A episode. And if you're not aware, I just started doing this little mini series where I will ask a question, or I'll ask for questions in my Facebook group, and the questions that pop up, I'll do a whole episode around it. And as you can tell with the title, the main question I got was about fasting. So I wanted to go out and hopefully answer some questions, clear up some things, share you my opinions, and maybe shed some light on the process of fasting. And maybe also shed some light on other popular diets along the lines of fasting as well. But yeah, so without further ado, I'm gonna get this show on the road because it's my birthday today, and Hannah's got plans for me, and she's like threatening to leave me. Not leave me, but like just leave me behind for my own birthday shenanigans. So anywho, if you're watching this on YouTube, I look crazy. I had jujitsu this morning, and then I had workouts, and I'm just running behind. So don't look at me all that much. Just go listen to the audio version. All right, perfect. So anyway, let's talk about fasting. Let's dive into fasting. It's become so popular, right? And fasting was probably one of the first like diets I got into before I knew everything that I know now about weight loss, fat loss, health in general. And I remember I was going to a buddy of mine. I was going to a wedding in Arizona. This is probably 3 or 4 years ago at this point. And I was road tripping with my two friends from college. And, this is when I was really first diving into the whole holistic side of health and fitness. I knew a lot about the fitness side of everything. I knew how to push, I knew how to train people physically, but I didn't really know how to meet them biologically or nutritionally or within behavior. Right. So I was consuming everything I possibly could to understand, like, what's the best form of dieting for fat loss, for weight loss. And I was also very curious about my own, because before I even started applying nutrition coaching to my clients, I was still on my own fat loss journey. I was still getting ready for my wedding in a way where I wanted to be as lean as possible. So I fell into the how to get as lean as possible process, right? And a lot of the articles pointed at fasting. Right. And I read a whole, I remember on this road trip, I was reading this article from I guess we could call him an influencer, Ben Greenfield, huge proponent to fasting. It says all the crazy benefits of fasting. I'm a living, breathing atonement of fasting, whatever. Right. And, the funny thing about any article or peer-reviewed study that you could read about these things, they're very convincing, and they're designed to be very convincing, right? They're designed to identify identify misconceptions or lack thereof, and then and really just each argument dominoes down and knocks and gets you to agree with what they're talking about, with what they're proposing to you in said article. And I was reading this article on this road trip, and I was learning about cell autophagy, right? Cell autophagy is just the process of cleaning itself, our cells cleaning themselves. And when you are fasted, your cells get into autophagy quicker, right? You give your digestion a break, and it allows you to really tap into fat cells a little bit more effectively. It improves energy. It forces your body to use stored energy instead of the food consumed energy. And it just down this rabbit hole. For men, it allows testosterone production to shoot up higher. I was like, what? How? Why? but before then, now I'm sitting here like, how? Why? What does that mean? But back then, I was just eating it up. I was just like, oh my goodness, I love all of this. The second I get home from this wedding, I'm gonna go on I'm gonna do an 8-hour feeding window, and I'm a 16-hour fast. You know what? That's gonna be my routine. I'm gonna move my workout back to noon, so that as soon as I'm done with my work, or I'm gonna move my excuse me, I'm gonna move my workout to 11. So as soon as I'm done with my workout, I can start eating again, right? And then I would do that. I would do that, but this is before I knew anything about nutrition. Um, this is just me manipulating one variable, but not the main variable. All right. So here's the thing. Here is the thing when it comes to any fad diet whatsoever. It can help. It can do what you expect to help you lose weight, right? There are other aspects of fad diets that can, you can see benefits from. Energy increases, discipline increases, self-control increases, right? All these things that go with it. However, there's only one way to lose weight. There's only one way to gain weight. And I want you to really understand that, okay? The only way we lose weight is to be in a calorie deficit. The only way to gain weight is to be in a caloric surplus. If you are eating more calories than you burn, even in a short window of time, you will still inevitably gain weight, right? Same with losing weight. If you only, actually, I think the main draw of fasting for weight loss is because it just naturally restricts your calories, because you have a cutoff where you can no longer eat. And a lot of like late night snacking or beverages that have calories in them, you tend to avoid them a lot, right? So no matter what, no matter if you're eating in a fasting window or not, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter. It's not going to have any special effects, right? Everything, keeping calories the same. There's been multiple studies where, people eat fasted, they eat the same amount of calories. People eat unfasted, eat the same amount of calories. They're controlled, they're in a calorie deficit the whole time. There's no significant difference. There's no real difference, because when calories are accounted for, it doesn't matter what time you eat your calories, right? So I'm gonna bust that right now. There's no special like fat loss properties or weight loss properties just because you're fasting, right? But that doesn't mean there are not some positive benefits. And really with this, I'm going to tell you the good side of fasting. I'm going to tell you the bad side. I'm going to tell you the ugly side of fasting, right? So starting with the good. The good is what I said earlier. It can be an easier way to put yourself in a calorie deficit because you have a cutoff time, especially if you struggle with snacking at night, late at night, before you're going to bed. If you have a busy morning, right, and it's just easier for you to not eat breakfast anyway and just have all your calories towards that latter half of the day, great, awesome. Like, that's amazing for you that it's helping you, it's fitting into your schedule, and it works out pretty well. I'm not saying that autophagy, like the cell cleaning, I'm not that won't happen. I'm not saying that it could improve your digestion. It probably could. Especially, some people, they essentially wake up and start eating, and uh, uh, they're snacking just perpetually throughout the day. Again, having those cutoff points and those starting points can be very beneficial, and create structure around your food that could ultimately allow you to eat less than you consume, right? But however, this is why fad diets I have a major problem with, because there's no really context or understanding a lot of times. I mean, they will, again, the articles, the books, they'll tell you foods that you should be eating. We all know what the foods that we should be eating. We should prioritize nutrient dense whole foods more often than not, right? And a lot of times we'll feel a lot better when we stop eating as much, less nutrient dense foods, like very easily snacky things, higher calorie foods that just don't provide a lot for our body. And when we have these like guidelines in our head, and we have this understanding or this commitment to a diet like this, again, you're probably more likely to make a little bit better nutritional choices, which will solve a lot of the problems that you deal with, right? Because you're imposing structure and boundaries with your food. However, here's some of the bad stuff. Bad stuff about that is, I'll start with bad. Most of the studies around fasting have been done with men, and men are much more capable at operating in fasted states as opposed to women. biologically, and I'm going to butcher the science around this, so I'm just going to give you the gist. And if you're hearing this and you know more about me, if you hear this and I completely butcher this, please correct me. Please tell me I'm wrong. I will always own up to when I say something wrong. I do not want to mislead or misguide anyone. But for when I was studying, and when I was reading up on it, most of the studies were done on men, and the men saw a lot more benefits than women did. And from my understanding biologically, I like to think back to like hunter gatherer times. Men were more hunters, right? Women were more gatherers, more caregivers. Men biologically had to go and work very hard for their food. And sometimes they would have to go extended periods of time without eating. However, women biologically were the caregivers, were always were able to take care of little ones, to help raise families, help keep people together. And they weren't in the environments of eating as often or not eating as often. No, they were not put in an environment that was forced to fast for any reason, right? So that being said, extended periods of fasting for men is usually pretty okay, right? You'll be fine. You won't really have many negative downsides. And for women, it's not the fact that you're not capable. Women are not capable. It's more the fact that their biology doesn't always agree with fasting windows, just because of biological reasons. And again, I'm butchering the science around here, and I don't usually recommend most of my clients to do this anyway, because the bad side for women is higher irritability, lower blood sugar, and it just doesn't always agree with their day-to-day. Again, I could be completely butchering this, but it's not to say that a woman could try it and still not and still see benefits. It's not to say that you won't. It's just saying that from what my experience, my understanding, holding it long time is not as beneficial. Just as like I don't know if this would be a accurate comparison, but women aren't supposed to be lean, like too lean. Excuse me. I don't want to misspeak too much, but there's a certain body fat percentage where it becomes detrimental for a woman's health. She starts losing her period, and it starts becoming very difficult for her to operate on certain aspects of her biological functions, right? So like once women get below like 15% body fat, it becomes very, very dangerous. Not dangerous. It just becomes a point of unhealthy aspect, because body fat for women is usually much more important for hormone stimulation and production, right? Whereas men, again, don't have that much detriments of being as lean or too lean. Dangerous leanness for men is like sub 6% for longer extended period of time. Not to say that a woman cannot go below 15%, but when it's held there for extensive period of time, puts a lot of stress on hormone production, right? So anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole. But anyway, so bad part of that for women, it could have some negative outcomes for irritability and lower blood sugar, and just make it difficult to just feel normal. At least maybe in the beginning, you could see the benefits, but again, if it's extended for a long period of time, it might not work out as well. Other bad sides is, putting more rules around your food when it comes to fasting. A lot of people have a hard time of like, you can eat this, you can't eat that. You can eat this, you can't eat that, right? You can't touch that, can't touch that, can't touch that. So now it's like, oh, you can't eat from this time to this time. So then like this process of like cravings start to increase. We want to break our fast and, have the thing that we can't have, and again, it just becomes around behavioral aspects of like, well, now you have more rules that you have to work around, and we're stubborn human beings, and we don't like rules all that much. So putting those rules could make it harder for you to not overeat or overindulge, because you have the need to want to eat, because that's all you're thinking about all the time, right? And that kind of bleeds a little bit more over into the ugly side of fasting, in my opinion. But again, I'll talk about that in a second. And then I had one more bad thing I wanted to talk about. I guess it's not a bad thing. I guess before I finish this segment, everything has a time and a place, and until we actually try it, we don't know for sure, right? And if you try it and you see improvements, you feel good, you feel better, great, keep doing it. If you try it and it's not working for you, but you're forcing yourself through it because you think you have to, and it's like you've heard all the good articles, you know, don't be afraid to pivot, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All right, so now the ugly side of fasting. It's going to kind of bleed off of that behavior aspect, where we can't have certain foods, we can't touch certain things. This is where eating disorders can start to come into play, because now, again, we're putting in so many rules around our food where it's like you can't have food for this experience at this extended time. So binge eating can start to happen in your calorie window, where you start gaining weight because, oh, I'm so good until noon, and then noon hits and I just eat everything. I eat everything. I struggle I struggle with this a lot. Especially when I get so focused on like working, I'll start working at like 8 a.m. and I'll go until like 1 without even thinking and without realizing I didn't eat. So then I get up and I'm starving and I go to the pantry, I have my meal that I would like to eat, but like I'm snacking consistently because like I'm hungry and my food is not done yet, right? But this could lead to extremes where we're like binging on things that may not binging too much too often. Again, even if your calorie window, if you're eating more calories than you burn, you're going to start gaining weight. Right. And the binge eating and eating disorders in general are very difficult to fight out of, difficult to work through, because now it's a whole different dynamic. And usually it's like, all right, get the hell out of there. Stop putting your rules around the food. And we need to focus instead on weight loss on the aspect of understanding your relationship with your food again and restoring that first. I guess that's really the only ugly aspect of fasting, what it could lead to. I don't typically like it. I don't typically care for fasting all that much. I don't know how. I don't care for fasting when it comes to a weight loss or fat loss tool, right? Because when you focus on what we focus on a lot in the Facebook group and a lot with what I'm coaching my clients, we're just focusing on prioritizing nutrient dense foods more often, right? And when you do that, you'll start noticing energy improvements, and you'll stop eating as much of the foods that do cause dysfunction and dysregulation within your body. And you won't necessarily need a fasting window to say when and when you cannot eat, right? If it helps, gives you structure, that's great. Like I fast, not because I want to, but because like if I wake up, I'm the most focused, I'm the most clear in the morning, right? So I'm a morning person. I like getting all my most important stuff in the day. And then once I'm done with most of the important things in my day, it's usually around 10 or 11 o'clock, right? And then I have my first meal. But I'm not intentionally like, I don't tell people, oh yeah, I intermittent fast, right? I just know, like, for my body, if I eat, my energy kind of dips a little, my focus kind of dips a little, and I know how that responds to my body, right? Whereas somebody who may wake up, they may be very irritable without having food in their system. They may thrive better with having food early in the morning, and that's okay. That's great. Do that, right? So fasting can be a useful tool, right? But knowing all the sides of it, it can help. It could also make things a lot worse. And like I said, like again, because I'm going down a rabbit hole, I don't really care for it all that much. I don't have any of my clients fasting, unless it works for their schedule, right? If they are someone who has to be at work early as hell, I'm not going to have them eat their 3 meals a day, with like their breakfast has to be at like 8:30, if their workday starts at 5 and they don't get a chance to eat until like 10, or great. Well, then we're quote unquote fasting, but I don't care. I just want you to get 3 meals in a day, So there could, with everything, with every diet out there, with everything, I hope this is clear. I know I'm kind of going all over the place. My birthday head is not in a good place, but ultimately it could help. It could help, but if it just like any diet, keto could help, right? But it could also have a lot more. It could also worsen things in the long run. So if you're curious, if you want to start it, if you want to try it, I'm all for trying it, right? Do your best. And, best practices I've heard, right? And because it works for me, 8-hour feeding window, 16-hour fast. But I know working up to that is probably much more ideal. So, probably start with a 12-10 or maybe even a 12-12. fasting window to feeding window before you restrict your time, and also be willing to understand that the benefits you see probably aren't just solely going to be with weight loss and fat loss. They're probably, if I find that that fasting is most effective when it's used for structural purposes, creating a routine, or it works well for your schedule. If you struggle, if you're able to practice, discipline, I guess, quote unquote discipline, I think that's good if you have the right mentality around it. But if you're going into it expecting to lose weight just because you're fasting, and you're putting your rules around it, you could be setting yourself up for long-term damage, dysfunction that could just make things a little bit more difficult for you. But yeah, I think oh man, this is why I podcast, because I have so many thoughts coming out all at once. But I think, if you're still listening to this at this point, you have to check your headspace. Check your headspace. What's your intention? It's something I talk about a lot with my clients. What is the intent behind what we're doing, right? Are we doing it just to do it, or are we doing it because it helps us, because it makes us feel better? Are we doing it because we have to, or are we doing it because we want to, right? And if you want to fast, if fasting helps you, great. Do it, practice it. But if it starts to not work, or it starts to make you feel less, or starts to make you feel worse, don't be afraid to pivot. Don't be afraid to switch things up. But remember this: ultimately, calories in, calories in versus calories out, right? But appropriately. That does not mean eat as little as possible. This means eat enough of the right stuff to help you feel good, satisfied, so that your deficit doesn't feel miserable, and you're not thinking about food all the time, and you're supporting your body, right? Supporting your body also means stress management, taking care of yourself, sleeping better, moving with intention, moving in a way that you enjoy, so that so your body gets positive sending signals, that your hormones will start to realize, oh, everything's on fire. We feel good. We feel support. We don't need excess weight to store, to hold on to anymore, because you're taking care of your body. You're feeding me appropriately. You're helping me good. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're in a feeding window or a fasted state or not, when calories are accounted for, and when you take care of your stress management and you work from the inside out. So yeah, that was a lot. And I don't know if that made much sense. I probably should have did a little bit more preparation, but I wanted to do this live because I have to leave in 20 minutes. So I might want to redo this one, and do a little bit more focused approach. But anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope that answers some of your questions, guys. And I appreciate you sending it to me. So if you did learn something, let me know. If you're watching this or listening to this on the podcast, on the YouTube, or on the podcast platforms, I appreciate it. Please share it with somebody, one person. If you did learn something, if you're watching this in my Facebook group, I hope this helps. I hope you learned something as well. Let me know down below. And if I need to clarify anything, if I kind of glaze over something that you would be interested in me doing a deeper dive on, and I probably should just re-up my whole, I probably, what the fuck am I trying to say? I would be happy to. I would be happy to clarify anything and correct anything that I may have misspoken on. But yeah, anyway, I got to get going. Hannah's almost ready for me to leave. So I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if I'm a bit late on responding to your happy birthdays, I will do my best to get back to those as quickly as possible. So have an awesome day, guys. I will see you on the next one.